For more on tonight's topic now is Christian Ziegler, a GOP state committeeman, and Rod Thompson, president of the Sarasota GOP Club. Thank you both for being here. Sure. On this Independence Day, let me lob you a softball right off the top here. What would our forefathers think about this election season? Christian?
They think it's interesting, just like we all do, but I think one thing that's clearly happened, at least on the Republican side, is the voice of the people's being heard, and that's really what founded this country. That's what they intended for everything, you know, the way our government was set up, and that's what we're seeing play out on the Republican side.
Totally agree that the sort of total free-for-all under, you know, freedom of speech and association and all that was part of the foundation and the Bill of Rights there plays out very well in this race, particularly on the Republican side, but yet it's sort of in the Democrat side with Bernie Sanders too, where you have upstarts that are really looking to change the way things are. That's certainly the heart of our forefathers. They were changing the way things are, and both Sanders and Trump really want to change the way things are.
I heard an interesting quote that could apply to either Sanders or Trump. I mean, not Clinton, but Sanders. Somebody said, they exist because the mainstream politicians failed. Care to comment on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of frustration with Washington. There's frustration with politics as usual, talking points, staff-run campaigns, the consultant class really controlling the direction of candidates. And, you know, when you look at both Trump and Sanders, they're definitely unique, and they're outside the norm of previous nominees. And I know on the Republican side, it's interesting because it's really energized the individuals that are in the middle, but also the very far-right conservatives as well. So we're really excited. It's going to be a fun year.
It's ironic we call Sanders an outsider. He's been a senator for a number of years in Washington.
Right, but he's been an independent senator, and he's really been totally ineffective as a senator. And so in that way, a little bit of an outsider. But also, he ran, you know, in the Democrat Party, starting as an independent, and he's always caucused with the Democrats, but he is an outsider as far as perspective and wanting to sort of upset the table cart that is Washington, D.C.
Some have criticized Trump about being a loose cannon. In fact, many have done that. And he said, no, once we get closer to the election, I'll stop doing these things. I'll stop tweeting. I'll scale it back. Yeah. Is he able to do that? Is he going to pull it back at some point?
I don't know, and I don't know if he needs to. I mean, when you look at him, you look at the Republican primary, that was a difficult battle. There were 17 people that were running for that race, and he came out on top with Trump being Trump, right? So he might be more effective just being himself and just, you know, saying what's on his mind. And I think people are ready for that, and that's what's really tapped into and energized the base.
One of the most popular things about Trump is his lack of political correctness. I think that resonates with a lot of people in the Republican Party, but also a lot of people that are independents and sort of moderates and just only pay attention a little bit, who feel almost crushed sometimes by the requirements of political correctness. And Trump is just trampling all of those. So I think it would actually behoove him to just keep being who he is. People who want him to scale back and become more presidential, whatever the heck that really is, I think that'd be a mistake, because that's not how Trump got where he is right now.
When it comes to choosing a partner in life or a running mate in life, you need to have somebody who balances you out. Some are surprised that Chris Christie would be on a short list, the governor of New Jersey, because he's also a Northeastern Republican, white male. Who would your advice be to look at for Trump's running mate?
Well, I know he also is just talked to Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, and he's he would be an amazing vice president pick. Really understands how Washington works, but he's also a very good conservative. So I really like Pence so far that I've seen.
They met this past weekend at the Trump golf course in New Jersey.
They did. I think it's really hard to tell who Trump might choose. Oftentimes, the political pundits are looking at it like, who could bring this state? Who could bring this demographic? Again, that is not the way Trump has operated. It's not the way he thinks. It's not the traditional method. I think it's still very possible that he could choose somebody that nobody in the pundit class is actually looking at.
If you could give him, and by the way, do you have any suggestions, any wild cards that come to mind at all?
Wouldn't dream of giving him advice on that point.
On one hand, would you suggest you suggest he find a establishment Republican or a wild card?
I think somebody who can complement him well, and only he knows who that best person would be.
If you had one piece of advice to give Donald Trump, what would it be, Christian?
I think continue to go out there and communicate and reach out directly to the people. I mean, he's done a great job, like Rod was mentioning, where political correctness is really thrown out the window with him. He's not concerned with that. He's not filtered. And I think that's really resonated with people across the board that are just totally frustrated with politics as usual. So I would continue to just go out there, get that message out, state what he believes, and go directly to the people like he has.
Yeah, Obviously, to a degree, this election is between the way we do things and the way some people think we ought to do things. So I think in part, we have an establishment, a totally establishment candidate in Hillary Clinton, and we have a totally anti-establishment candidate in Donald Trump. So I think that he needs to maintain his separation from her, which is to say continue to focus on also her weaknesses, her issues with corruptions and scandals and whatnot, being a Clinton essentially, and then her unpopularity and untrustworthiness with people. If he can keep focused on the reasons why she shouldn't be president and then come around to why he would make the best one, I think that's probably his strongest case.
Yeah, when you look at him, there's a clear difference between the two. You had Donald Trump, who's created tens of thousands of jobs, and Hillary Clinton, who's never created a job. So really, as Rod mentions, focusing on that difference. And I think people are ready to see someone in office that has created jobs, that brings that business mentality and not that Washington mentality.
There are many Republicans, though, who say they like Trump's message and some of his ideas. Yeah. They just wish he'd scale it back 10% and polish some rough edges, and then he'd bring in more voters.
Yeah, but when you look at Mitt Romney during the last election, I think he was a little too scaled back, and it didn't really energize people, and he was a little too reserved. And then, you know, after the election, he became a little bit more public and a little bit more opened up and was a little bit more personable. And when people saw that, they said, man, if we could have had that Mitt Romney during the election, he would have won. So, you know, there's always going to be people that are going to give you advice, either you're too scaled back or you're not scaled back, you know. And I think Trump's playing it right. He went through a bloody primary with 17 people running. He came out on top. Not only did he come out on top, but he set the record for most number of votes in a Republican primary. And I say he just continues it. And now he can pull in that moderate wing of the party that really is resonating with him.
You know, you mentioned the primary. I just got a flashback. I have a suspicion that if Trump hadn't run, Jeb Bush very well might be the nominee right now.
I don't think so. I think the electorate showed that it was ready for a change.
That's it.
I think it would have been closer to a Cruz, maybe a Rubio, something like that. I really don't think it would have been somebody's establishment, and certainly not with Clinton pulling ahead. I don't think this country wanted a Clinton-Bush race in the fall.
If you look back at the record, the history books, the number of times there's been a Bush or a Clinton on the ticket since 1980, most of the time,
right.
Starting with George Herbert Walker as Vice President 80,
True.
All the way through. But interesting little trivia you can check on Google later on. What do you predict to happen at the conventions, Christian?
Convention's going to be exciting. It's going to be, I think, a one-of-a-kind event. Donald Trump's bringing his flavor in. He's going to change it up a little bit, so it's not really focused on politicians and political speak. He's talking about bringing in celebrities and other individuals in life that have really been champions in life, and that's kind of the message that they want to get across, from what I've heard at least. But right after that convention, it's really going to kick off the excitement, and from the convention through the election, that's when you're going to see the Republicans really excited to get behind Trump and out there making the calls and knocking on the doors.
Are you surprised or disappointed that more of the mainstream Republicans, Mitt Romney, John McCain, haven't embraced or even endorsed Trump?
Not surprised. Look at the way Trump ran his campaign. I mean, he ran against what they represent in the establishment there. He wanted to overturn all that. And I think that you'll see a lot of that on display, representative, metaphorically even, if you will, at the convention. Because what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of entertainment. You're going to see a lot of, you know, paying attention to what's going on, not just political speeches. I remember so many conventions over the years have been just dull as nails for large sections of it. Even the delegates can barely stay awake. That is not going to be a Trump convention. So here's my prediction. My prediction is that this will have the highest ratings of any convention ever.
We'll see. You'll be there, and I'll be there covering it for ABC7 as well. Do you think that the polls, are they going to change? Because right now, Clinton is leading.
She is, but we got plenty of time. It's still early. And again, once you get through the convention, you get a little bit of a bump. Hillary will probably get a bump after that as well. But, you know, she has serious problems when you look at the FBI. She was just interviewed by the FBI, sat down with them on Saturday. I'm out hanging out by the beach, and she's sitting there getting interrogated by the FBI. So as this plays out and as more details come, she's going to be in a lot of trouble. And I think you're going to see Trump's numbers go up and her numbers go down as we get closer.
I think it'll be close. I think it'll be real close. And I wouldn't really want to predict it for sure, but I think it'll be real close. The polls right now, it's too early. Not enough has happened. Too much can happen between now and September. FBI, the conventions, everything else. Too much can happen.
Long way to go. Christian, Rod, thank you for your time today. Thanks for being here. When we come back, some viewer mail on last night's show. Stay with us.